So we're not going to fight anymore. We're going to pull together and we're going to find a way to get out of here. First, we're going to seal off this
What's the good in it?
As a matter of fact, that's Lawrence.
No more room in hell. The dead will walk here.
What's up, horror fiends? Welcome to Three Corners of Horror. Well, tonight's two of us. We're one man down. Rick, we'll miss you, especially kicking off Shark Week. Before we start discussing that, though, let me introduce my brother, the man, the legend, the myth, JR. You ready to start kicking off our Shark Week month, basically?
Going back to 1999.
And it's really good.
And before the whole, what we're going through recently with the whole shark phenomenon, with more attacks, it was a little quiet during those times, but an interesting movie. Is it one of the top shark movies out there, or is it just another sunken treasure?
Shit, I did not have a mini line. Well, I guess for this one, I mean, this one took a bite out of me. So, and I'll mention it at the end because I actually saw this one at the movie theater.
Yeah, I did too.
So, guys, the movie that we're discussing tonight is going to be the 1999 Deep Blue Sea. It is directed by Rennie Harlin, Thomas Jane as Carter Blake, Saffron Burrows as Dr. Susan McAllister, and Samuel L. Jackson as Russell Franklin. All right, so if you have not seen this movie, or actually if you haven't seen it, probably you should go watch it and then come back. If it's been a while, just to remind you, Dr. Susan, they're doing research for them to cure Alzheimer's disease. And what they were doing was basically influencing the genetic code of mako sharks and making them smarter. And in doing so, what they were doing was basically extracting the fluid from the shark's brain to then put it on a non-reactive brain to, as she said, get lightning in the bottle. So again, this is man manipulating nature. And we already know man manipulating nature just really fucking does not go well. So what they end up creating were these super intelligent sharks. So JR, like, what did you think of the super intelligent sharks?
Well, I thought it was interesting because, you know, when people think of sharks, they think of mindless killing machines. And that's basically a stereotype of sharks. They just go eat, hunt, kill, and that's it. But to add a twist to it, the fact that not only do we know they're highly intelligent sharks, we witness what they ended up doing. Well, let's be honest, they wanted freedom. Well, every captured animal wants freedom. So I like the idea. The only thing I wish is if we could have seen a bit more of it throughout the film. I felt like once we hit a certain point, it kind of went too fast and should slow down a little bit just to show a little bit about the sharks. But yeah, intelligent sharks, I like that they did that in this film. It was a different from what we're used to watching, especially with sharks.
Right. I mean, it basically heightened their own senses, if anything. What I will admit to is that I have seen this movie a whole bunch of times. But, you know, in us doing our show, we now look at it through different lenses. And you're paying a little bit more attention. So it, again, and I know they said it in the movie, but it just went over me. And this last time watching it was the fact that I thought they were just hunting them. That it basically, but it wasn't that. Yeah. They were sinking the facility so they can get the fence further down. And when I noticed it, I'm like, holy shit, I didn't pick up on that. When I watched this before, yeah, and I'm like, damn, I missed a whole lot when I didn't notice that. And again, they said it a couple of times, but it went over me. But the fact that they were smart enough to basically section by section just keep making the place get filled up with water so it can bring the whole place down and basically them escape, that is basically where it showed just how intelligent they were. I would have liked to, because when the movie starts, it starts with stars. I think it was one of the tiger sharks that got out, right? I don't think it was one of the Makos
It was one of the Gen 1 that thing that got out because the tiger shark was basically used to feed.
to feed him. All right. Well,
Yeah.
one of the ones that got away
Was a Gen 1.
All right, they captured him, and even Carter tried to figure out how they got away, and he asked Tom, and we'll tell you who Tom is later on, but he asked him, how high the fences are. So I would have liked to seen maybe a little bit later on them showing how they figured out how to get out.
Yeah.
But as you said, we should have gotten just a little bit more to really emphasize just how dangerous these sharks actually were for being so smart. I mean, again, it seemed like somehow they, because we're talking about Rennie Harlan. If you've seen any Rennie Harlan movies, they can be a little bit out in a good way, but it seemed like they even knew the blueprint of the place as they were going after them. You noticed that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like it felt like somehow at some point in time did one of them swim by and go, oh wait, hold on, is that the so yeah, it should have had just a little bit more show of the actual intelligence that they had. But with the intelligence, however, you do not get rid of the animal nature that a shark has. And this movie had a lot of great deaths in it. There's a lot of other actors besides the one that I just named. You have Michael Rappaport plays Tom, Stellan Skarsgård. Hello, the father of the Skarsgård boys. He plays Tim. If you watch The Sopranos, Ada Turturro, she's Brenda, the one that works up in the tower. So you have this whole cast that's down there. And again, it's a shark movie. So eventually we know people are going to meet their deaths. And you guys all know the famous one. So I already told, I know before even Rick knew we were not going to do Samuel L. Jackson. Everyone's discussed that pretty much, to the end. So as far as like some of the best deaths, I like the Stellan Skarsgård one because that whole scene and it's the worst part. It was like a double type of death because first after they are successful, and he's sitting there lighting his cigarette, he goes to pet the shark, which is supposed to be asleep, bites off his arm, and that scene, and even though I did like the slow-mo of that because it happened so fast, so to slow down what actually happened and seeing that his arm was missing, he's gushing blood everywhere, then they have to call in a rescue. Helicopter shows up in the middle of a hurricane because a hurricane is heading to Aquatica, the name of the location. So you have got all this tension, like them getting them on the helicopter. And then, of course, the freaking cable gets caught. Dude goes in the water. It's not going to go well for him. And obviously, the shark grabs him, freaking sends the piece of the helicopter towards the tower.
Yeah. But
so you think it's done, and it's not done there because later on, as they're all trying to figure out how to get out of here, Samuel asks them, "Can somebody tell me what that is?" And here comes the shark with the stretcher in his mouth, and Stellan just like with it, at least he had oxygen for at least this part, but I probably would have wished I didn't have the oxygen on at this point. And the fucking shark hurls him at the glass, and he's stuck on there. The whole sequence, probably one of my, besides obviously Samuel, one of my favorite sequences in there because you thought it was done and it wasn't. And again, it showed you the intelligence of the shark to have an object that he's going to basically fling to break this glass. But not just that, kind of go, fuck you guys. Here's your doctor.
And that was cool because not only that, like you said, he crashed into the big glass. Now, he didn't die instantly. And the fact that once the glass caved in, he died horribly.
Oh, yeah.
Because with the pressure and the weight and that thing just hitting all over the place. I was surprised they didn't show that, like, parts of him later because I'm sure he got shredded afterwards.
Yeah, with all the glass.
Yeah, they should have showed a little bit more, but yeah, that was, and even when he's dropping into the water, the fact that they went in slow motion, and you kind of knew, nah, not for nothing. If you're on a helicopter and your thing drops, I don't know your job, but you figure you at least fly up if the thing's not working. But the fact that they kind of just, I mean, granted, you're in a hurricane, but still, it's like that slight hesitation. You're like, oh God, and the fact that, I think would have been cooler in that scene too is if all the other cameras were still active, and then they go, "Oh, look, what's that coming?" And as you see the thing, you look down and see different angles of
that would have
that
been
would have
cool.
been really cool. But yeah, I like, and just the fact that how hard it threw him. Like I was surprised when it threw him that he didn't start bleeding. So there was a
that's
couple
true,
of
'cause,
things
I
in
mean,
the film, like
I mean, there's a couple of questionable directing, and somebody didn't think,
yes,
especially with us seasoned people who watch these movies and watch them over and over, that after a while, I'll mention something later on that I'm sitting there going, really though?
I have a
Really?
big bone to pick with this film. But no, that scene was actually pretty good, and it's Skarsgård. I mean, how many movies have you actually seen him get killed?
Not many.
No.
No. So, well, what's yours? What was your favorite death?
See,
Well, not favorite, but
mine's was Michael Rappaport's. I mean, poor guy, because the whole movie, his motto was to Carter, "Who do you trust? Me. Why? Because I'm trustworthy." And the one time he needed Carter to back him up, he let him down. And what happened was they went to basically, I think, turn on the power in order to be able to open another door.
Yeah.
So they go into, and the funny thing is they go into the same lab, which you would figure you'd be more hesitant to go into that lab than anything. But they go into the lab, they're able to basically turn the switch. Tom's all excited, happy. Carter is happy, looks behind him, and in one instant, the shark comes, smacks him right into the board, starts ripping into him. Homage to Jaws. The leg comes down, starts twitching. And, I mean, he dies so brutal, and it wasn't even quick. I mean, the shark just mauled on him and then basically took off with him. But that scene was really cool because of that. It was just an instant flash. Like it happened so quick. But if you actually watch it too, when that leg slowly comes off, you're like, holy crap. And
yeah.
It starts twitching. Like, he was one character I didn't want to die. I mean, you kind of knew he was going to die in a way,
but the whole time, his one thing was, I'm not going in the water.
Yeah.
He was trying to find a way out without going in he knew that if he went in the water, it wasn't going to end well for him. And trusting Carter, he went into the water, and his intuition was actually right from the start.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I liked his death too. Like, I was going back and forth between, and I had a feeling you were going to pick Michael Rappaport. So that's why I was like, I got to pick something else, because in the past, and since I got to go first, I was just like, all right. But yeah, I'm like, like I said, sequence wise, the Stellan, Tim's death, and those two are, aside of, Samuel's, some of the best kills in this one. Dude. And I actually did like the doctor's death also.
Which one?
Was her name Brenda? Susan.
I loved her.
Susan.
Yeah, I felt bad.
I mean, she's been in a lot of movies. Well, I think what she realized was that she created this.
Well, she found out she created it, that they spiced the genetics, because she didn't really know.
Oh, she didn't.
No, she didn't know.
Oh,
because there was that scene where Samuel Jackson, because remember they were walking by, and there was like something hitting the metal door, and then all of a sudden the screws start flying out, and they run, and then Samuel Jackson asked Carter, was that what I think it was? Was that really a fish breaking through? And then he was like, "Oh, ask her." So when Samuel Jackson asked her, she mentioned how they both basically play with the genetics of the shark, and that's where
Yeah.
Susan goes, you be, because she didn't know. She didn't realize the whole time that they spliced the genes of the shark.
The one other good thing about the movie is that besides the shark part was the natural disaster element to it, with the facility going down, man trying to get out as water's filling everywhere. Like the facility itself became another monster on its own, granted a monster because of the sharks turning it into a monster and the hurricane that came in.
Yeah.
But yeah, the movie, it was a good mixture with the sharks and just having this place basically collapsing in on them. I'm not gonna lie, when I first saw it in the theater, the sharks back then, we're talking about 1999. We are now spoiled with the technology we have now and the special effects. So for me back then, I'm gonna give two sides of a little bit on this when it comes to me, but there's gonna be the 1999 and the now. But I'm gonna throw to you first because you're basically our shark expert. You've seen a lot of shark movies. Too many. So, go ahead, JR, because I know on this one you're about to make some shark steaks, I have a feeling. So what did you think of the special effects on the sharks?
This is the biggest problem I have on this film is we were led to believe that these sharks were massive. And there were certain sequences in this movie where the sharks were actually shapeshifters and shrunk in size. Now, the scene I have behind me was when Carter was ready to get the Gen 2 and the two Gen 1s attacked from both sides. Now, when you actually seen when it pulled back, because the sharks recognized that, which is one of the great scenes in the film too, when he pulls the gun on the sharks, they go swim backwards, and Samuel L. Jackson goes, "Did I just tell me I didn't see that?"
That was pretty awesome.
They recognize the guns, and then the girl goes, "Oh, they sharks cannot swim backwards." That's another hint that she did not know that they were doing the spice with the genes, because then they're like, "Oh, Skarsgård was like, oh, let's just focus." But the size of those sharks were massive.
Yeah.
However, when they snuck into the facility, they shrunk by 50%.
Agreed.
And that was my biggest knot, because if you would have left them that size, I don't feel like, granted, you would have cut a lot of scenes inside, but there's certain scenes inside you still could have gotten away with massive sharks. And even the Gen 2. Now, that scene you're talking where Susan dies at the end, that Gen 2 was massive. But that was the same Gen 2 that they brought up in the lab, and she was smaller.
Yeah.
Which I think was a big problem in this film, because it took away from our interpretation of how big the sharks were. There's another scene where Janice is, with Samuel L. Jackson's character, and she's saying, "Oh, beneath here is a world of monsters." And you see the shadow of these massive sharks. But for me, it's like, I besides that, the CGI of these sharks, I think was actually pretty good for its time.
Yeah,
because they did look realistic.
It was.
Even the scene where the parrot gets killed looked very realistic. Like,
oh no, good thing Rick was. That was the only thing I was worried about Rick being on here, is because whenever he watched it, I totally forgot the parrot died.
Yes,
and I'm like, oh no, Rick's not going to be happy that the parrot died.
But compared to a lot of shark movies, honestly, even these days, those sharks still look better than half the shark movies that I've seen.
Yeah.
By a lot. AKA Requiem. That's not going to mention. But yeah, the sharks look cool. My biggest problem was just the shape-shifting of the shark in size.
Yeah, and I'm going to piggyback on that, because I agree. Because when I saw it in the movie theater, and again on the big screen, they looked huge. And I remember going, holy shit, those sharks are big. Like, we're used to Jaws. These should look like orcas.
Yeah.
Like in size. They were huge. And I remember just on the big screen, but then when you watch it at home, you're like, that shit didn't look like it could fit in the tunnel.
No.
Like, it would have been stuck.
Yeah.
Like it would have been like sitting there and not be able to get through. Had to basically have been trying to get through from the outside the whole time. So no, I agree on that. And even when I rewatched it, actually, I did like the effects of them.
Yeah.
The scene where after they bring him in and Carter's down there, and Russell is then brought in, and you don't know what's kind of going on, but then you see him because I guess he's a wrangler.
Yeah.
And he's sitting there trying to take the license plate out. So like that scene was pretty cool when they did it. And the other scene was when Carter turned around, he had the flashlight and is coming right at him. So the sharks looked ominous. The teeth, like
Good.
those fucking teeth look like they could tear into you,
Yeah.
which kind of showed you that it was probably like them fucking with the genetic codes of them that made, because it seemed like, unless correct me if I'm wrong, it was like 2 to 3 rows.
No, majority of sharks have that many.
Have
rows.
that?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought it just had one
because
row.
they're constantly losing so the minute they lose a tooth, another one slips in and takes a spot. So they're constantly being replaced as they go.
Really quick, because we didn't bring them up, and there's one more person that was in this movie, and it's probably where I sat there and kind of became JR. I'm criticizing it. So LL Cool J has a role in this movie. He's the chef. It was his parrot that got eaten by the shark, and it's like at times I liked the character, and at times I didn't. But he had a basically sequence all on his own, fighting the shark. So for me, when and then again nitpick, but he's walking around and like he's waist high and he's in his shoes still trying to get around, and I'm like, dude, that's a big dude. I'd like to take off those shoes. But he tries to climb up a rack.
Yeah.
Listen, I went to school for bakery, and those racks are flimsy enough without them being submerged in water. So for me, everything else in the movie actually was kind of fun, but then we got to a little bit of, this is where lazy writing, I'm going to call it, because when he is fighting the shark, he gets in the oven and somehow the shark turns the oven on. So they're so smart they can turn an oven on, and he's sitting there he smells the gas. So then he takes his axe and starts chopping at metal. Guys, metal against metal. You get sparks. You got gas. It's going to blow up. Like for me, that scene is what killed it for me with LL's, because then he kind of became like John McClane after that.
Yeah.
Honestly, I mean, shit. Just when he fought you dive into him going against the shark. What'd you think about like Tori's? Because this is like as we get to the end, where we're down to Dr. Susan, Carter, and Chef.
Like going off what you're saying, if you don't get a spark from the gas, but yeah, you get a spark when you throw a lighter. Technically, we've watched enough shark movies. The shark's in the water, so the explosion is going to go over them. It's not going to it'll probably burn them like, Jaws 2. But there's no way that the shark's going to die like that. So for me, I'm like, just come on. Because if the shark got killed in that explosion, regardless of that the shark is in front of her, he still has a lot of water to protect him. But then suffered no damage because he dived into the water.
Yeah.
That didn't make sense.
Yeah.
The other thing that makes sense was when I seen him walk in the hallways, I kind of felt like the chef's quarter was in the upper levels.
And they made it seem that
like he was lower because he's walking towards the same entrance, like going to it's just a lot of it didn't make sense for his character, and I feel like because who he was, they try to make sure he survived. And in that scene where he gets stabbed by the shark, then he's stabbing the shark with his cross.
In the eye. Trying to get the eye.
Yeah, in the eye, which you're swinging violently. You're not going to be like, all right, I got to make sure I get him in the eye. Because basically you're just trying to, get out of the way. And then you grab the gun and shoot Carter in the leg. So everything that had to do with you was clumsy. And it just didn't help your character much. I mean, they were better off with just letting him get killed somehow, some way. Well, if he would have died in the oven, it would have been irony.
He said it too.
Yeah,
That was his joke. He goes,
I'm not gonna
"Really?
die.
And I'm gonna die in the oven."
It
Well,
should have them die in the oven.
but my other part was with so when the shark grabs him, like we saw how easily he tore apart everybody else.
Was she? That was a Gen 2.
But the Gen 2, when she got
Killed
when she
Susan,
killed
yeah.
Susan, it was you saw how
Yeah.
so like literal like so I'm like sitting there like we just saw what these teeth can do. He didn't lose a leg or anything, you know. So you know the not so favorite like the I guess I don't even know what you would call that because spotlight is the good. So the low light in this movie, I'll just coin that word for right now. The low light was that honestly, like you know when it took you to it took you out of the movie for me. I wanted to know what was going on with everybody else. You know, and that's the only reason I wanted to bring them up. You know, everybody else, like I said, brings up Samuel in this one, but all had a big role in here. But the role was kind of a little bit catered to because again, the dude just walked out with a shark bite, not mauled. You know, everybody else, literally, when those sharks bit into them, like the piece came off.
Well, Skarsgård tore the arm off.
Yeah.
Susan, she mauled. But yeah, him, she only bit gently.
Actually, poor Susan got caught between the legs.
Yeah.
Because when you rewatch it again, when he comes up out of the water,
She
literally, she's literally between. I'm like, oh, that's the worst way to go. Like it's gonna be like chomp that area down.
You know what was confusion in that last scene too? Is remember, Carter told Tom to raise the fences. How hard are those fences off the water? He was like 8 feet. So you had the Gen 1, which is smart, but not as smart as a Gen 2, capable of escaping. Obviously, you figured probably threw herself over the fence or something, because that's the only way it could really escape. Because they found no other holes in there. So that fence was a lot lower when she's trying to bust through. But yet she couldn't jump over the fence like the Gen 1 probably did. Yeah, it was just a lot of questions in this movie.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, like I said, I mean, again, it's Rennie Harlan, Cutthroat Island. If anybody knows Cutthroat Island, that should pretty much let you know that sometimes some of the decisions aren't all great from him on that. Before we wrap it up, I have a little fun fact here. So the writer of the movie, he actually witnessed someone getting attacked by a shark and then started having nightmares of being hunted by a shark that could read his mind, which is where he came up with the idea of Deep Blue Sea. Whereas in this one, the sharks were just smart in here, but he was having nightmares of a shark that could read his mind and he couldn't get away from. So I thought that was pretty interesting, you know, like how you take an event that you witnessed and you come up with this movie with super intelligent sharks here.
Now, if you remember in the beginning of the movie, when Carter's swimming with the tiger shark, he pulls out a license plate.
When he's going into
that same license plate was in the movie Jaws when they removed it from the stomach of the tiger shark they found.
Nice.
Also, it is a homage to James Bond because the beginning license plate is 007.
Oh shit! Didn't even pick up on that either.
Yeah.
Damn, that's pretty cool. I love when movies do that. I love when movies throw a little nod to basically, you know, my movie would not be here had not you done this movie, and this is how I'm going to give you a little because I didn't know that. I mean, like that's all new for me.
Yeah, I've read it somewhere. I actually read it on Instagram. I'll give You Run Podcast mentioned it. Did a little research before this, and yeah, it was actually pretty true.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Now, I'm going to pull this one on us tonight with our rating. Every once in a while, I tell you, we're going to take it out of the way we normally rate everything else. So, because this isn't a, you know, killer. I mean, essentially, the sharks are the killers. But so let's go. You want to do like creature or like what category? Just to take it out of how we normally would rate. Because like I said, we've done this every once in a while. Just because we want to give a movie a better rating, even though compared to what we rated higher, it's not the same thing.
It's a little bit of everything. I mean, it is a creature feature, but then again, it's not.
It's a natural disaster.
Well, because who is the real monsters in this film? Is it the sharks or is it the
Or the
people playing
humans.
with the genics?
Yeah.
It's like it's a little bit of everything, actually. Um, yeah, I think we should just rate the way we usually do.
Really? Let's go. We'll just go for. All right. You go ahead, go first. Give us your closing thoughts on this, your rate on it.
All right, so this movie, I think it's still a fun watch. This movie, I would say, it is one of the better shark movies there are. I would say this movie is most likely on everybody's top 10 list for
Oh, yeah.
shark movies.
Oh yeah.
Probably even top 5. The movie still to this day stands the test of time. You can still watch it. Like I said, the shark special effects is a lot better than 90% of the shark movies now, which just speaks volumes of how bad shark movies are as far as CGI goes.
Didn't we talk about one that we barely saw the sharks?
We talked what was it?
Was it 47?
47 meters down. And even The Shallows. The Shallows is a movie that the CGI of the shark is great because you don't see the shark, but when you see the shark, they make sure to basically show you the sheer size of the shark itself and the sheer brutality and raw power the shark has. So that CGI, that shark is, I would say, top tier of the shark movies now. It is a fun movie. You still have to, who's the monsters of the movie? Is it mankind once again, Spice and Jeans? Is it, the sharks who are basically you could say the victims of this film because, they were used for certain procedures. I mean, granted, Alzheimer's is a serious, problem in this country. And just throw a little loop into this. Today, they actually approved this medication that supposedly slows down the effects of Alzheimer's. You could read it. It's actually read it before we started watching this, which was kind of ironic. But yeah, they actually approved it today. It's an FDA medication that supposedly slows down the beginning stage of Alzheimer's by 27%. So read into that because it kind of ties into what this movie really is about, of trying to stop the effects of Alzheimer's. But for me, I'm going to rate it a 4 out of 5 because it's still a very good movie to watch. It has flaws, a lot of flaws, but sometimes the one flaw I cannot go past is the size of the sharks. That just still kills me to this day. If it wasn't for that, I would have gave it a higher rating, but it's still a fun movie to watch. Has a little bit of everything, comedy, humor, great shark kills. Yeah, it's definitely a 4 out of 5 for me.
All right. It's a 4 out of 5 for me also. I mean, it besides Jaws and Jaws 2, this is probably one of the shark movies I can rewatch over and not really grow tired of it. It's fun. Again, it'd been some time since I watched it. Like I said, we were trying to come up with movies for us to do for this month. And when we came up with this one, I'm like, damn, it's probably been like 10 years since I've seen this movie, to be honest with you. And I watched it. I'm like, man, I forgot how much fun this movie is. Yeah. This movie's a lot of fun. You have your moments where you're sitting there like, and you're holding your breath, just waiting. So yeah, I mean, 4 out of 5 for me. Like you said, has its flaws. I want to bring up LL because that's where I felt some of the flaws were in. The sharks, as you said, when I saw it in the movie theater, and I remember just how enormous they looked, and then rewatching it again, and I'm like, they wouldn't have fit there. And they did. But yes, I mean, but overall, 4 for me. I highly recommend the movie. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's streaming on Max if you have Max. But definitely add this to your, I mean, shark movies are your summer movies. They're not necessarily the things you watch during the winter because nobody's in the fucking water. Even in Florida, I live in Florida. We don't go in the water, during the winter time. It's fucking cold. And sharks love probably the water anyway. But yeah, it's a highly recommended shark movie compared to the crap we've been seeing recently. Like, honestly, if you've been watching more of the recent stuff and you haven't seen it, check it out. I promise you that you're gonna love it. That's it for me and JR. As I said, this month is going to be pretty much shark themes for us. I may or may not be here for next week's episode. We do have Angel that's going to be joining. So it's either going to be 4 of us or 3 of us or 3 of them. So just if you this is your first time checking out, obviously subscribe, follow, get the updates. For all you that have been following us, we've got such good stuff coming up for you guys. So make sure to tune in. And I think, what do we do? What next week is what? Bait?
Bait.
So, dude, if you've not checked out Bait yet, make sure you watch it. So when you got the review, you've already seen the movie. So, JR, any last words here?
No, man, just ready to throw some more chum in the water and see what we could scoop up.
All right, so for the 3 corners of horror, I am not taking Rick's Stay Scared line. I'm going to use mine. Ta-ta for now.